For the good diagnosis and for
To make, so we make a description because we want to reach a good diagnosis. All right.
pathology.
Ma'am, to get an approach to the diagnosis, that we can differentiate the lesions.
Very good. So now I asked Dia, you see, she said something about congested blood vessels, and I guess, Dia, you were talking about some little congestion over here. See, I marked it, yes? And you talked about hemorrhage over here, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Very good. Now I want to ask you, do you think that you are noticing that there is a spot of hemorrhage on the right side and that there is a small congested group of blood vessels on the left side? Is that going to help you to make a diagnosis?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am. So, do you think then that it was worthy of a description?
No, ma'am. It might not have been included in the. Means it was not essential to include it in the description.
In the description. So, really, what should the description include?
Ma'am, certain things and description should include those things which are helpful for reaching to a diagnosis and also excluding the differential diagnosis.
So, in other words, we should try to make a description, or we have to assess again, all right? We don't know what ultimately is going to help us or hinder us in making a diagnosis, but we have to make an assessment as to what are the relevant, and this is the operative word, relevant positive and relevant negative findings. Okay, so number one, a description is not about only what you see, and there are many irrelevant things that one sees. Okay, there may be spots on the slide, and there may be dust and God knows what that has been included, but surely we don't want to describe that, isn't that right? Yes. So we want to try and assess what observations are going to be relevant to our diagnosis, and we have to look at not only what we see, but we also have to make an assessment of what we don't see and what we are expecting or we should be seeing, but it is not there. Agreed? So it's relevant, positive, and relevant, negative findings. All right, good. So far your description has been good. All right. Now, can I ask you about this on 1A? You said something about these being papillary processes. Isn't that right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So now, would you like to tell me why you think that these are papillary?
I told that these are papillary.
Yes, I know that, but you please ask to annotate, and then please use your annotation pen to tell me why these are papillary, because you use that term.
Yes, ma'am. I sent you the report.
Right. Okay. Now come on.
Yes, ma'am. I think that if I draw a line from here, if I think
You draw a line from there. Okay.
and if I then I see that these projections are above this basement membrane.
They are above the surface. You don't mean this basement membrane. You mean
Yes,
the
ma'am.
surface, right? Yes, you mean the surface, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, okay, very good. So they are above. So everything that you see in pathology that is above the surface is a papilla. Is that what you're saying, Dia? Yes?
No, ma'am, not always.
Not always. Right? But this, according to you, is a papilla. Why? Why? So you called it a papilla, so I'm just wanting to ask why.
Ma'am, there are finger-like projections
finger-like projections.
चाहिएगा वो 50
You want to
off
draw
में थोड़ी
the
लेना होता है,
finger-like
जब कुछ
projections,
चाहिए होगा
please?
तभी लेंगे ना।
Yes, ma'am.
लगाएंगे ना
नहीं तो पड़े हुए ना वो
Can you
पहले वो तो
outline
लगाओ।
तो
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Do you think that those are finger-like projections that reach the, the surface? Are they only finger-like projections, or there are some other projections that are not finger-like? Everything is finger-like?
Not, ma'am, not everything, but
This thing is finger-like?
no, ma'am. Not this
That
one.
is good. So now, what kind of papilla are you going to call that? What sort of papilla are you going to call it?
उसको लगता है मैं बड़ा वैसे
Anybody else? Come on now, one by one. That was Diya. So, Limpy, do you think Diya is right when she called this
उसको पता है मैं
a
मतलब
papilla?
किसी अच्छे मैंगो पिल्स में जाती रहती हूँ जैसे
You just have to answer yes or no.
वही बोल रहा था ना मैं
Yeah, Limpy,
आपको ऐसे
are you
लगा
there?
पूछ रहे।
If you don't answer immediately, I don't know whether you are there or you're not there.
He is from जैसे मैं थी ना
I don't know if she's there or
थोड़ा
not.
वैसी family से
Shweta?
वैसा वाला है। मगर इस
Hello, ma'am.
No,
Yes,
ma'am.
Niveta.
Papilla should have a fibrovascular core in the center.
All right, so a papilla should have a fibrovascular core in the center, right? Very good.
Can be called a pseudo papilla, ma'am, because true papilla will be having a fibrovascular core.
Okay, very good. What about you, Vimi?
This is not papillae, not vascular core. It's just dilated epithelium, like a
Is talking in the background, please. Is that Limpy? Limpy, is there somebody else in the room with you? All right. Okay. Okay, yes. Well, I think that there is some doubt about whether there are papillae in this thing at all. Okay, what is it actually that is happening over here? You know, when you say that something is papillary, you are making some kind of inference, that is an interpretation, and what you mean is that whatever is growing above the surface, like you said, number one is epithelium, and number two, it is that epithelium which is the true lesion in that particular, that is actually forming the papilla, like a papillary carcinoma, okay, or a papillary cyst adenoma, or a papilloma of the skin, okay, or the epidermis, or anything. What does it mean? That proliferation that is growing exophytically, or for that matter, endophytically into a space or into its stroma, actually is of epithelial origin. Okay. Now you look very carefully over here. Do you think that this lesion that is exophytic, and it definitely is exophytic, do you agree, Diya, that this
Yes,
is exophytic?
Yes, ma'am.
Very good. So, is exophytic is not the result of the epithelium, which in this case is squamous epithelium of the tongue. Isn't that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. Do you think this lesion is the result of the proliferation of the squamous epithelium? Do you think so? If you think so, then you are right to call this a papilla. If you don't think so, then you are not right to call this a papilla. So do you get why we or when we should limit the word papilla too, it means that there is a proliferation of an epithelium into above the surface into a lumen or whatever way you want to describe it, but that it drags along with it, yes, its fibrovascular core. So it is essentially a proliferation of that epithelium, and there is no other pathology that is associated with it.
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
now tell me, Dia, how certain are you that this is a papilla?
No, ma'am. Now I would tell that this is not a
How would you
papillomatosis.
describe this? It is?
Ma'am, now I would tell that it is an exophytic growth having a stratified squamous lining, and there are some cystically dilated spaces in the subepithelial region.
Yes. So, and it's not just some cystically dilated spaces. There are numerous cystically dilated spaces, some of them filling the entire stromal content of that exophytic squamous lesion. Isn't that so?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So this is not a true papilla, because if you make the mistake of just calling it a papillary lesion, you may come to the wrong conclusion. And that was the reason I asked, why do we need to make a description? A description is nothing but composed of two different things. Number one, observations, and number two, interpretations of those observations. So it is observation plus interpretation. So it's not just an observation, but when we make an observation, and here we have this epithelium, which is squamous epithelium, growing in an exophytic way, yeah, and there are
Yes,
two
ma'am.
cystically dilated spaces that are filling that stroma, and you put
Yes.
two and two together, and your interpretation is that this is not a papilla. Do you get me, Dia? Does
Yes,
it
ma'am.
make sense to all four of you?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, has Limpy arrived, or is she disappeared
Yes,
again? Limpy,
Yes,
are you
ma'am.
there?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
So I hope you've understood what it is that we are talking about. All right, come on, Dia. Is there anything now that you want to say about this? This is at higher power.
Yes, ma'am. In the upper topmost picture of 1A, we can again see those many cystically dilated spaces having some secretions within them. And in the lower picture, I can see that these are irregular cystically dilated spaces in the stroma, and it is associated with marked mononuclear cell inflammatory infiltrate in the stroma. And
All right.
in the
Before we
right,
go to 1B, can I ask all the other three, do you agree with what Dia said? Or is there something that you would like to either disagree or add? You can start with Vimi.
Ma'am, subepithelium is showing some pale eosinophilic material with inflammatory cells more towards the subepithelium, towards the epithelium.
So I just wanted to ask, you have more or less said what she said. Did you disagree with anything that Dia said?
No, ma'am.
You agree with everything that Dia said? Because you're just repeating otherwise.
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
Dia, you know what you said? Can I repeat what you said? You said that there were cystically dilated spaces that contained some pale secretions, right?
yes, ma'am.
That there was a mononuclear infiltration
Inflammatory.
that was seen.
Yes, ma'am.
Now let me ask Vimi, you agreed, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What about you, Limpy? You agree? Limpy, you have to answer quickly. Do you agree? Limpy is not there. So, Sumita,
Yes, ma'am. I can see the inflammatory infiltrates, ma'am, but not sure if they are mononuclear in this field at this.
So that's the only thing you disagree. Now I want to ask the three of you, well, Limpy is not there, but those who are here, including Dia,
Yes, ma'am.
do you agree with Dia's use of the word secretion? I said exactly what Dia said. So now, Vimi, you agree with the word secretion?
Not a secretion, ma'am. Actually, it's a pale eosinophilic material that is being filled in the area.
Dia, do you want to change that word secretion?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I was wrong. Now I am getting it, because secretions I would have used only if there was any lining to it. Means if there was any cuboidal or some columnar lining, then only some space would have secretions.
I see. Okay, Sweta, now you've heard both Vimi as well as Dia.
Yes, ma'am.
Very good. So now do you agree with both of them, or you disagree with either of them, or what?
I don't think it is a secretion, ma'am. It is just a eosinophilic material. No, ma'am, it's eosinophilic material.
So now let us come to a discussion of what is a secretion. So I don't know about whether Limpy is there or not, but let me start with Dia. What is a secretion?
ग्लास बॉटल में मंगवा करूं
Ma'am, secretion is a content inside a space which is released by the cells lining it.
So you tell me what are these
ये देख
spaces
30
that
लीटर
release
सेविंग प्लान है
these things? What are these cells that release secretions?
69 का पड़ेगा
तो उनको फोन करके पूछो ना
मैम,
आप में से मतलब अगर मैं वैसा एडवांस
मैम, yes, ma'am. Ma'am, any case, I can give example, or I have to
You
stick
tell
this
me.
to
Tell me. Yes, you can do it by example. Tell me.
Okay. Ma'am, suppose in intestine we have goblet cells, so it will be secreting mucus. So that's what we call a secretion.
That is what is called a secretion.
करते हैं
तो एक लीटर
Vimi?
नहीं हो गया
2 दिन में पी लूंगा
ठीक है कल होगा तो
Ma'am?
रोज का आधा लीटर
Yes, Vimi. Tell me.
रोज का आधा लीटर नहीं ना देते
Secretion is what we
No.
one cell is secreting, but
69
it's not.
rupees per liter है तो एक
It's
लीटर
not should be
आएगा।
included in a histopathology description. I
यार नहीं
think,
आता
ma'am.
ना,
Secretions are not to be
YouTube
included in a histopathology
इसमें
description.
क्या है?
Vimi.
We will be saying it a pale eosinophilic or a basophilic material. We can't say.
Goodness, I see. So if I see, in the thyroid follicles, I see this
अभी 70 रुपए
thick
का है ये
This
इधर
thing
60
I
लीटर
cannot call it
सेविंग प्लान कर
secretion.
देते हैं
Or if I see it, if I see the
60 लीटर तो भी है वैसे यार
in the glands of the skin, for instance, okay, or anywhere, I can't call those things secretions.
60 दिन निकल जाएंगे
Why
And
not?
while describing
तो जैसे मैंने ऑल्टरनेट देख किया
is that
ये चल रहा है ऐसे
secretion
what is a secretion?
It is a proteinaceous substance which is produced by the glands. Which are lined
Produced by glands.
ट्यूसडे
Ah, okay. So they have to be produced by glands.
डेली हो गया
And yet, Sweta, you call this a secretion? You said that. You agreed that this was a secretion on the left-hand side.
No, ma'am.
मंडे नहीं चाहिए
So I think that by now we should realize that secretions are produced. Yeah, they are
मंडे चाहिए
they are
अच्छा ये जो चाहिए
extracellular material. Yes, that is produced by an epithelial cell, right?
2070 कैसे कर
Yes
दिया
or
आपने?
no?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes, that is what a secretion is. Now, if it is not epithelial, I think it would be hard to call it a secretion. And if we do call something a secretion, then what do we? And it is not epithelial. We call those things matrices, no? So if a mesenchymal cell produces what we would otherwise have called a
25
secretion,
रुपए का होता ना एक
yeah, there is collagen, there is osteoid, there is myxoid. There are lots of things that are produced by mesenchymal cells and are extravasated. Yes, that means they are extracellular. Now becomes a matrix. When it is an epithelial cell, it's not a matrix, is it?
No, ma'am. It's a secretion.
It's a secretion. So now have we come to the
ये अच्छा
conclusion
रिंग
that we use the word secretion? Of course, we often use this secretion in a very colloquial kind of manner. But if we want to be specific about it, it means that it is an extracellular product, is it not? Of
Yes, ma'am.
epithelial cell.
Yes, ma'am.
That is what is a secretion. So now is everybody agreed that this on the left hand side is not a secretion, or is it a secretion? Start from you, Divya, Adiya. Is it
Yes,
a
ma'am.
secretion?
No, ma'am. It is not a secretion,
It's
ma'am.
not a secretion. Vimi,
एक ये हाँ ये वाला देखा
Not a secretion.
not a secretion. Suveta,
No, ma'am, it's not a secretion.
it is not a secretion. Limpy,
प्रोविलैक्ट
now is Limpy there or is she disappeared?
She's left the meeting and she's having connectivity issue.
All right, she's left it. Perhaps she's got internet connection. So we are certain that this is not a secretion. All right, and we'll come to why you think it is not a secretion a little later. Now come on, Diya, what's on the right?
Yes, ma'am. In case 1B, we can see again those cystically dilated spaces which are having a back-to-back arrangement, and they contain some eosinophilic kind of material inside inside them, and surrounding them are this fibrous tissue all throughout the section.
Fibrous tissue all throughout the section. What do you mean by surrounding this is fibrous tissue?
Ma'am, these are divided into cystic spaces by the fibrous septa going through in between them.
Right? So there are fibrous septa in between these cystic spaces, right? So surrounded by fibrous tissue doesn't mean anything much. All right.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So now let's go to the next. Now tell me what you can see at this part.
Ma'am, in case 1A, I can see only, apart from the previous description, I can only see those mononuclear inflammatory cell infiltrate in the stroma. And in the lower picture, again, it's the same picture which was depicted previously. This one is a cystically dilated space which is having an irregular outline, and it is associated with chronic mononuclear inflammatory cell infiltrate in the stroma.
All right.
And
Whenever you see a cellular, whenever you see a space, what are the things that we need to describe about that space?
ma'am, first of all, whether it is lined by anything,
तो फिर 500
whether
वाला सही है ना,
there is
जब
any cell
जब
lining
भी होगा,
and the
जब
content
जब
and the
भी होगा,
contents
तभी करना
of
है,
the
सही है
cyst.
ना? पता नहीं
Uh-huh.
क्या बता
And ma'am,
Have you told me anything about the lining?
नहीं बताऊँ
ma'am, lining I'm not sure in this picture. That will be more evident in the higher
वो वाला
magnification
मिलता है
picture.
ना, सही है अगर 500 वाला मिलता है वो अदर लीटर ही भी है ना क्या लगता है जी?
What
वो
is the
एक ही
lining?
टाइप ही है ना So,
Ma'am, in this case 1A, ma'am,
Yes, in 1A. What is the lining?
ma'am, it is having a discontinuous lining by the
तो मुझे लगता है
ma'am, it is having a discontinuous lining by the endothelial cells.
Discontinuous lining by endothelial cells.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you really think that that endothelial cells are discontinuous? Cannot be, no? All right. And what on in case 1B?
Ma'am, in case 1B, I can see this infoldings inside this cystically dilated spaces, and these infoldings are lined by cells which are
Infoldings of what?
ma'am infoldings of the lining epithelium,
All right.
and these are lined by cells which are low cuboidal in nature.
ये अच्छा है
Right.
2000 रुपए में खर्च
So what do you think this is? Do you think that this is
ऑर्डर प्लेस करूंगा ना पता ही नहीं लगता क्या हो रहा है
this is
मैं
epithelium?
ऑर्डर
It
करूंगा
is an
एक है ये
endothelium or what
डिलीवर्ड
is it?
है या क्या है
Ma'am,
कुछ नहीं
I
है।
think in
Delivered
case
का no
1B it is
response फोन आ रहा है।
epithelium. epithelial lining.
Everybody
Yes.
agrees? All three of you, the rest of you
कम से कम
agree?
पता तो लगेगा इसका भी टेस्ट करता हूँ ना ट्रायल
Yes,
करते
ma'am.
हैं
You do. Okay, Suveta.
1A also, I
यार
think it
इतना
is
क्या
an
हो गया यार
epithelial
अच्छा
lining.
मतलब इतना तो पीना
1A also you thought was an epithelial lining.
बिल्कुल ही वो शुद्ध
Suveta, if you thought that 1A was an epithelial
क्या हो
lining,
गया
then
इसमें?
why do you say that that was not a secretion? You agree
बंद
it
करना
was
कर
not
रहा
a
हूँ
secretion. If you have an epithelial
बोल रहा
lining
हूँ
and you
डाउनलोड
have
भी कर
something
लिया
inside of it which is pale or completely pink, why did you say it was not a secretion then?
335
There's something contradictory about it, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Now you can see the thing at higher power.
और
Yes,
WhatsApp
ma'am.
पे चलता है
Ah. So now,
Ma'am.
Sumita, you want to make some observations in 1A.
Yes, ma'am. It is lined by flattened
बस
epithelium,
ज़्यादा
ma'am,
लगा रहे हैं,
and
बता
I think it is a secretion, ma'am.
You still think that is flattened epithelium? Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Very good. And what do you think, Suveta, about 1B? That's also epithelium.
Yes, ma'am. Flattened to low cuboidal epithelium.
All right. So according to Suveta, both 1A and 1B
यार
have
काबुली
got
वाला भी अच्छा था पर मैं सीरियसली बोल रहा हूँ इसका नहीं है सही यार
What does Vimy think?
क्या सीन है
Ma'am, the case 1
इसका
is
वो
having
नहीं है
flat
सही यार
endothelial
ऐप वो नहीं
lining,
इसकी
not the epithelium. And the case
वो
1B is
क्या
having that
पता
low
इनको
cuboid
मतलब कि है कि नहीं है
epithelial
दिया कि
lining.
नहीं दिया फोन करता रहेगा
So
यार
there are
टाइम
two
भी
of you, and that
बंद नहीं
is
करना तो
that Limpy?
इट इज नॉट पॉसिबल ना
Because I can hear some hello
ये
in
इसको
the
फोन करके
background.
पूछते हैं ना
Is that you, Limpy?
क्या पूछेगी
No, ma'am, Limpy is not there.
Oh, Limpy. Okay. So we have a difference of opinion over here. Let's
यार
see if
A2 मिल
yeah. So
सही बोल रहा हूँ खतरनाक होता है
and Sumeta,
Yes, ma'am.
they think that this is
ये contact us
this
क्या करना
epithelium.
contact छोड़
What you
दे?
think
यार
is an
इनको कितने
epithelium
बजे
in
देते हो
1A
क्या देते
is
हो कैसे
actually an
देते हो सारा
endothelium.
पूछते हो
Will you explain to them why they are wrong?
कॉल कर दिया मैंने इससे
There is no discrepancy about 1B.
कार्ड और नंबर
Now,
दे दो।
Sumeta, will you explain to them why they are wrong?
8411
Thought it was a continuous lining, and the cells have the nucleus appears flattened, and
Yes. So you said two things. You said the nucleus appears flattened, and you said that it is a continuous lining. So
Yes, ma'am.
what does that make it an epithelium? These two features that you saw, they are going to ask you, and I'm asking on their behalf, why do those two features make it
Ma'am, I
an
want to
epithelium?
start a subscription for your A2 milk. Okay.
I'm not sure, ma'am.
You're not sure, but you said it
I'm
was an
residing in
epithelium.
Harbour,
Despite the fact
Navi
that they
Mumbai.
said it was an endothelium, you persisted in calling it an epithelium. So now tell me, you must have some very
No, I'm calling you for the first
deep-seated
time.
reason,
I just
right,
wanted to clarify
for wanting to
certain
call
things.
it.
Okay.
In the meantime, Bonita,
Number
is
one is
anybody
this
in
is,
the chat box, please
pure
ask
A2
them
milk, right?
to answer, or I'm asking them and they can answer.
This is organic
do
and
they
everything,
think
no? No,
that case
no
1A
hanky panky.
the cysts are lined by epithelium or endothelium?
Okay. And
Somebody said
secondly,
it's
ma'am,
lymphatic spaces.
if I make a subscription,
Somebody
when
said
will
it is
you deliver the
lymphatic
milk?
spaces, but that
I mean,
doesn't
what
tell.
time?
Say, I assume that they think it is endothelium because it is
I
lymphatic
don't want
spaces,
5
unless they
o'clock
think
or
that
5:30.
lymphatic spaces
I
are
just
lined by
want
something
after like
else.
6:30.
Yeah, any other answers in the chat box?
Not yet.
Are you sure it will happen?
Not yet. Okay. So now, yes, come on.
Because I was taking
we
from
have to get to
Kabuli
the
milk.
bottom of
If
this,
you have heard
Suveta.
about it, A2 milk, I just tried of
So
Kabuli
tell me,
milk.
you
But
said
they come
something
anytime,
very
like
interesting.
2:30 or I am
And
not
that was
up
also
5:30, I
something
don't
that
want that.
Dia said. That this is a discontinuous lining. And you
After
said that
6:30,
you
anytime
found
is
it
fine.
continuous and therefore it is an epithelium. Dia said it was
Evening, ma'am, there
discontinuous
is any
and
service in
that's
the
why she
evening?
thought it was an endothelium. Am I right, Dia? That's what you said, right?
So after 6:30,
Yes, ma'am, but
if I
I
try
was
it,
telling that it is a lymphatic
you have
endothelium,
1 liter bottle.
not a vascular space
sorry.
endothelium.
So what does
I'm
it
sorry?
matter whether it's lymphatic or vascular space? What's the difference?
Yeah.
It's an endothelium, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So you thought there is some story you have heard
So
that
I
a
shouldn't
lymphatic
order on the app.
endothelium is discontinuous? Where did you read that? An endothelium
I'm
is an
sorry?
endothelium. Whether it is, why should it be discontinuous? You mean that lymph keeps on leaking out
Hello?
of its endothelium? So that
No,
we
ma'am.
are all
Yes,
over
yes,
the
ma'am.
place,
Please
we are
tell
full
me.
of lymph. Huh?
No, ma'am.
No, madam. Okay. But I think that there is some prevailing view
Ma'am, I'm
because
not getting your
it
voice
was
is not clear.
reflected in two things. One that you said and one that Suweta said. And what did Suweta say? That
System
it
as
is
in the app.
continuous and it is
Yeah, it's
flat.
9086.
Which suggests, Suweta, that if something is continuous,
086.
it must be an epithelium. Is that what you believe,
086.
Suweta?
No, ma'am. Epithelium can also be discontinuous.
007.
Oh, an epithelium can also be discontinuous. Such. Now that is interesting to me. Which epithelium is discontinuous, Suweta?
Then there is ulceration.
Or if there's ulceration. But do you think that
Yeah,
this
the reading
is ulcerated epithelium or something?
No, ma'am. No,
Lining
ma'am.
those
तो ये
No,
कोई
ma'am.
सही है और
So there
ये
is some
नवी
confusion
मूवी
going
यहाँ
on,
पे ही है
okay?
देखते हैं
When
कहाँ
we
पे अगर
see
पास में होगा तो
dilated
ये
spaces,
होंगे ना
which
इसको भी check करेंगे
are essentially sitting in a stroma. Do you realize that, Sumita, that these dilated spaces are sitting in a stroma, right?
Yes, ma'am.
They are flattened and they contain some pale material that is inside these spaces. We have very little doubt that it's unlikely that these are going to be epithelial spaces. All right. So now, for the sake of the audience and for the sake of you, when we look at something at low power, we ask these 5 questions. Do you know that we ask these 5 questions? I don't know if
ये तो पास में ही है ना
you ask these 5
बाबू
questions,
ये
but
वाशी
I
है
to
ये
myself.
खारकर है ना
So it makes my description.
नहीं वाशी
And
इधर
I
है तो
think
ये
the other
खारकर
will
है
answer these questions. And these are the 5 questions I ask myself always at low power.
यार एक
And the
बात
first
बता
one is
ये
there
पनवेल में
any
है
normal
अरे
tissue
मेरी
or
बात
structure
सुनना
present?
वो
Is
तो
there
छोड़ना
anything
तो हम
normal
काबुली से
or
क्यों नहीं मारते सस्ता
Yes,
भी है
ma'am.
what is that?
मुझे पता है
Ma'am, the
ठीक है
stratified
बात
squamous
ये देखिए
epithelium.
इसका देही
Very
कितना
good.
सही है इसमें डाल के
Is there any
बाबू
abnormality
बहुत अच्छी
seen?
मलाई आई थी आज
Yes, ma'am.
मैंने जो रात
Very
को खानी भी है
good.
मलाई
What is the relationship of the normal to the
ये
abnormal?
मैंने देखा कि प्योर दिखा रहा
Ma'am,
है
some of
18
these
यहाँ पे
cystic
नहीं।
spaces are
तो
lying
उसमें देखते हैं काबुली
intraepidermally.
का नाम है क्या नहीं है
देख
Some of the cystic spaces.
तूने ऑलरेडी देखा हुआ है
नहीं
Only
देखते
some?
चल पहन
क्या
Ma'am, some are lying intraepidermally and many of them are lying in the stroma, that is in the subepithelium.
Some of them are lying intraepidermally. You can actually see them in the epidermis. Can you point out one over here that is lying in the epidermis?
Yes,
In
ma'am.
the epidermis. Yeah, okay. Yeah, tell me. Where?
And this one.
देखते नहीं यहाँ पे आसपास का है क्या
That is in the epidermis? You think so? What's surrounding it? Let me ask Vimi. Do you agree with that what she has drawn is in the epidermis?
Ma'am, it's in the subepithelium only, I think.
So why is it looking like this, as if it is bloated?
Ma'am, maybe it is pushing from the epithelial region towards the epidermis. That's why.
चलो बाहर
Yes, because this is something that is being cut tangentially,
जो
right?
कैप्टन
So
फार्म है
it
ना
looks like it is
Yeah, बस
surrounded
बाहर
on
दो
all
भैया।
sides by
पनवेल
epidermis, but
में है।
actually it is not, because it has been cut tangentially. And you can
Yes.
you can get a structure that looks as if it is surrounded on all sides, but it is actually subepidermal. Okay, I just want
Yes.
to look at so many of these things. If you cut them tangentially over here, what will it look like? And you think that they are intraepidermal? Yeah, I'm cutting this thing tangentially like this. What will it show? Yeah,
Yes, ma'am. It will it will look like as if it was in the epidermis,
So
but
now
actually it was in the
it is
subepithelium.
not, right? So it's
Yes,
not
ma'am.
some, it is all. So what is
All.
the relationship of the normal to the abnormal?
What is it?
What? The abnormality is present in the subepithelial tissue, right? It is in the stroma. So is
Yes,
there a
ma'am.
pattern to this abnormality? What is the pattern? You've described it. So this is just a way of putting it all together. So what is the pattern?
Ma'am, back-to-back arrangement,
It
ma'am.
is dilated cystic spaces, okay? Now, the fifth question always is, where should I direct my high power examination? So where